Okay, today's video is going to talk about an interesting concept regarding devil fruits and how they interact with their users. Also, this conversation might give us insight into how devil fruits are created in the first place. This video will contain current manga information up to chapter 1046, so if you're not caught up, save this for when you are. The question I want to answer today is why Luffy's fruit awakened now of all times? What were the conditions and why weren't these conditions ever met before? Also, now that Kaido has demonstrated such a firm understanding of awakenings, it might be that he has an awakening of his own left over for the war in Wano. Figuring out as much as we can about awakenings might prove helpful for us later on. So if you're new to my channel, the way I view the world is by making connections. So let me connect you to my vision, the Parvision. So a main topic on my channel is talking about the future power potentials in One Piece. There's probably going to be more levels to Haki, now mythical ZOANS, even god fruits, also hidden fruits that are masquerading as other fruits. There's still so much left in One Piece in terms of potential, but one of the most important ones is awakenings. Now that we're being exposed to it like this in the current manga, we have to ask ourselves, will we see more awakenings, and how, and why, and from who? But before we go on, keep in mind I'm not going to go through all of the characters or weird powers, but rather characters who will probably still be relevant to the story. Also, I do want to talk about some other fringe things like how devil fruits work in general, because if we are talking about Sun God Nika, and if Nika was an entity that someone extracted his lineage factor and put into a devil fruit, then the Straw Hats have another person that this could happen to. Is there a potential for a God Usopp devil fruit? I mean, that's just jokes for now, but maybe if my Usopp video comes true, then getting a God Usopp devil fruit would be crazy. The point here is that, hypothetically, let's say whether or not you believe in my Usopp end of series power theory or not, let's say God Usopp turns into a devil fruit. Would this fruit contain the will to be the bravest warrior of the sea? But also, would the fruit choose someone who is compatible to that? And it's an interesting thought because it becomes relevant again later, but also, is there a world where all the Straw Hats become devil fruits? Like if you got Zoro as a devil fruit, it'd be a human fruit model king of hell, right? That'd be kind of crazy. But okay, back to the main topic, devil fruit awakenings. I want to get this one out of the way. It's mainly because Alabasta is so important in so many ways. Garp bringing it up after the last reveries. Also, there's many elements that parallel important arcs like Wano. There's also Eam holding a picture of Vivi, Vivi herself possibly being the ancient weapon, similar to Shirahoshi. Also, Alabasta on its own was supposed to have an ancient weapon there, and the Nefertiti dynasty was the only family of the original world government that chose to stay in the lower realm, as celestial dragons refer to it as. Alabasta also has a poneglyph that is probably really important to the story of One Piece, but conveniently we don't know what the details of it are besides of it talking about Pluton. But anyways, all of this makes sense that Alabasta will become relevant again in the story. All this being said, there's one more parallel from Alabasta to Wano, and that is the concept of guardian spirits. Yamato's dog fruit mythical model Okuchi no Makami, or a specific Japanese grey wolf that was considered a deity that protected humans, seems really important. An interesting note is that apparently, one, Kaido had to work hard to acquire Yamato's devil fruit, but the most important thing is that it was claimed to be the guardian spirit of Wano. Which is why, another side note, I don't think Yamato will join the Straw Hats. I can make a video about it, but it makes most sense to me that Yamato stays on Wano with Momonosuke and protects Wano, given that she's probably top 5 strongest people on Onigashima right now, and it makes sense that one of those people remain on Wano after it's opened up and needs to be protected. But then also you tie in that she's the guardian spirit of Wano, so it makes sense that she would need to stay. And there's so many other reasons, and I can, again, make another video on it, but just going back, the guardian spirit of Wano. That's really interesting because Alabasta had the same thing. Alabasta's guardian spirit was the Falcon, and that takes us to chapter 208 titled Guardian Spirit, where Pell claims that he is the guardian spirit of Alabasta, the Falcon, and while doing so, sacrifices himself by carrying the massive bomb into the sky to detonate in the air away from everyone else. Now, this wasn't your normal explosion. This explosion looked like it could have engulfed the entire city that they were in. And the craziest part is that Pell survived, right? I know this is a stretch, but what if Pell had some kind of mythical power over fire, and that's why the explosion didn't just obliterate him? I mean, I was gonna say maybe he is a phoenix instead of a falcon, but we have Marco, right? And again, I was fine with leaving Pell out of this list, but it's weird that while we're in Wano, Alabasta becomes relevant again, and they were the other place to have a guardian spirit within a devil fruit. And if we know anything about devil fruits now, it's that they were extracted lineage factors from actual people or entities. So Nika and Yamato's wolf, Kaido's dragon, Pell's falcon, they were all real. So maybe Pell has awakened his falcon fruit because of this explosion. He should have died, and didn't. Kind of similar to Luffy's situation right now, right? Luffy thought he died, but he didn't, and then awakened as Sun God Nika. But anyways, this brings us to a core premise of why there might be hidden fruits, the awakening factor of devil fruits. According to Kaido, awakening is what happens when your mind and body catch up to your powers. So to me, that sounds like your body has to hit certain requirements, but also your mind has to truly understand the power gifted to the user by the devil fruit. So that means there's a certain amount of synergy between the devil fruit and the user that has to be attained. And that's where an interesting concept also comes into play about how the devil fruit might impose its own test on the user, and it might also choose a user. Again, not too different than cursed swords, in the sense of like, if Zoro couldn't conquer Enma, then Zoro would have died, and Enma would have eventually found a new person that would hopefully be able to handle it. Which brings us to another example that we have very little information about, which is how much does a devil fruit influence or affect the mind of the user. Sabo is probably one of the best examples because we did get an understanding of what he was like without a devil fruit, and then after he gets Ace's fruit, he ends up having some character changes that could amount to him being more hot-headed and not being able to back down from specific fights, like he should have done when he saw Kuma enslaved, but he didn't, and probably ended up in a similar situation as Ace, ironically. So then that brings us to the Luffy situation. There's a lot of questions of whether the Luffy we know is because of Sun God Nika's will influencing Luffy, and my current understanding of it is that a devil fruit can pique the interest of certain people and grab their attention, like the Kitetsu did to Zoro, especially if there's a lot of synergy. So in Luffy's case, he probably had the compatibility to align with Nika's will, and on top of that, the power that Nika holds. I think that's a really important note. When you think of being a rubber man, yeah, the original understanding of it is that it's kind of a lame power, especially in comparison to something broken like the magma fruit or the ice fruit. But the other part of it is not just anyone could have this fruit or power and use it to its full potential. To properly utilize rubber to the full potential, you have to be willing to take a hit, to be hit. Do you know how big your balls have to be to face a gun, like even knowing it won't hurt you? That alone is pretty scary. Getting hit and taking damage is a core part of being a rubber man. So you have to accept that, meaning the person has to be brave enough to take intentional damage. So then the question is, did Luffy prove that to the fruit before consuming it? Yes, Luffy did. For this, we have to go back to chapter 1. Do you remember how Luffy got the scar on his face? He wanted to prove to Shanks' crew that he was serious and wanted to prove how tough he was, so he stabbed himself in the face. Shanks' crew was shocked as that was so idiotic, but nonetheless, they took Luffy to Makino's bar and had a toast to Luffy's courage. Then Luffy says this pivotal line, "It didn't hurt a bit. I'm not the least bit afraid of getting hurt. Take me with you on your next voyage. I want to be a pirate too." Now this is powerful, and I think a significant thing also is the next panels all consist of Luffy making everyone smile by talking to them, which we all know is really core to Nika, and then the next thing we see is Luffy already grabs the fruit and starts chomping on it. So I'm imagining by this point, Luffy had demonstrated that he is willing to take damage and get hurt to be free and pursue his ideals. Like if Nika was conscious and watching this bar scene, I can imagine him having the commentary to his friends or peers or other gods like, "You see this kid? He's hilarious. He's perfect. I want him to be my next user." Another important note is the character development Luffy has from start to end of this chapter. At the start, he wants to join Shanks so bad he stabbed himself. When he got kidnapped, he understood how much of a man Shanks truly was and understood why Shanks wouldn't take him out to the sea. And by the end of the chapter, despite recognizing how scary the pirate world is, he claims he's going to become a pirate on his own, and he'll also be better than Shanks and become king of the pirates. The reason why that's important is because it was established in this chapter conquer that pirates always have a good time and pirates have freedom. So Nika being the warrior of liberation and basically a freedom fighter, and Luffy claiming that he wants to be king of the pirates or people who were free, that's where the wills coincided. So if this is why Nika chose Luffy, why did it take so long for Luffy to be awakened into Nika? What were the exact requirements? So Nika was the warrior of liberation, so naturally the main understanding tying in the premise of choosing a proper user being not afraid to be dealt pain in achieving freedom, that is something Luffy has done throughout the series, specifically liberating Alabasta, Skypiea, Thriller Bark, where he was the warrior of hope, Fishmen Island, and Dressrosa. All of these situations were times where Luffy liberated a group of people, though it seems like over time his purpose started encompassing more and more people. Like Alabasta was solely for Vivi, Skypiea could be argued that it was to protect his crew and a few specific people, Thriller Bark was for Brook primarily, Fishman Island was for Shirahoshi and his crew, and he specifically didn't want to be a hero then. And then in Dressrosa, there was a mixture of so many things, but Law tried to push Luffy out of fighting Doflamingo and tried to have Kaido kill Doflamingo instead, but Luffy could not stand seeing the country in the state that it was in. But in Wano now, in the last major dialogues that Luffy had before going to Gear 5, we see a much more concerted effort of Luffy saying that he is fighting for the people of Wano and essentially specifically in trying to liberate them from Kaido. So it very much seems like over time, Luffy grew into a true liberator of sorts, where sure, he isn't doing it to be a hero, but he could not withstand Kaido's atrocities and was willing to take on the strongest creature in the world and the strongest conqueror he has had to face. And I think that is probably the biggest awakening factor for Nika. I think that not only the goal of liberation being achieved is important, but also the damage that is taken in trying to achieve that goal. It's not that Luffy hasn't been near death or exhaustion in the past, but this time he's being hit full force by a conqueror in order to liberate a nation. That is the first time in the entire show where this has happened. This hit is a first in the sense that Luffy, without defenses, tanked a full-powered conqueror's attack after resolving himself to be the warrior of liberation. This is incredibly important because now as Sun God Nika, that hit that Kaido landed to awaken Gear 5 doesn't really do anything to Nika, as Nika's true nature seems to just negate any attack really, even with Conqueror's coding. Like it seems like Luffy is taking damage, but also not really. So anyways, the will to liberate and the will to withstand any amount of damage to achieve that goal were probably the requirements for Nika's awakening. Now we can use this logic to apply to someone like Pell. Pell was supposed to die, but didn't. It was probably because he awakened his fruit, and what was the condition? Well, as the guardian spirit of Alabasta, he had to sacrifice himself for Alabasta, which is exactly what he did. Now let's use all of this logic on Yamato. The point earlier about Yamato's fruit, Kaido worked really hard to get that fruit and did not want Yamato to eat it. Despite that, Yamato managed to accidentally eat the fruit, and it makes you wonder, did the fruit choose Yamato? Why would it? Well, that's obvious. The wolf is supposed to be the guardian spirit of Wano, and who does Yamato want to be? Odin. Odin is quite literally the greatest guardian of Wano to exist since probably Ryuma, which I'll get back to in a little bit. So because Yamato wanted to be Odin, the fruit might have chosen Yamato because of the desire to serve and protect Wano. That being said, Yamato has yet to demonstrate this and prove itself, so it might be that once Yamato protects Wano, the mythical Zoan fruit will also be awakened. And now, most of the reason to even talk about awakenings is Kaido. Well, not just Kaido, but now that we are getting awakenings, it's important to understand who else might awaken or where else we might see it. It'll be interesting to see if there are more guardian spirits like Pell and Yamato. But also, based on the recent chapters, it seems like Kaido is either already awakened or has it in his back pocket. To me, it feels like Kaido might awaken soon, which will push Luffy to actually learn his Gear 5 abilities rather than what we are seeing right now, where it's just kind of like he's testing it out. That being said, let's entertain the idea that Kaido might still have an awakening left, and think about this because there are a lot of interesting thoughts here. So first, we know how Kaido got the fruit. It was because of Big Mom. So maybe the fish fruit didn't exactly choose Kaido, but maybe they were still compatible? So if we're assuming that Kaido can awaken his fruit, then that would mean he had already passed the requirements. So that made me wonder what possible requirements could there be for Kaido's mythical fish fruit model Azure Dragon. That's when it hit me. What if Kaido's fruit was actually the guardian spirit of Fishman Island? Nah, right? Hold on, wait a second. What was the kingdom called again? Ryugu Kingdom? What was the palace called? Ryugu Palace? What does that mean? Imperial Dragon Palace. What's on top of the palace? A dragon sculpture. And what does the dragon look like? Exactly like Kaido, but golden. And it even has the same antler horn thingies. It would be kind of fitting that the fish dragon fruit was the guardian spirit of Fishmen Island, because I mean, we didn't see any other dragons. For some reason their kingdom is literally the Imperial Dragon and looks like Kaido. But would that make sense? I mean, Kaido has never defended Fishmen Island from what we know, but he's also never attacked them from what we know. And to be fair, he literally loves Jack, and we don't know how they met. And I made a video earlier in the year about Kaido's preference for fishmen. And I have a secret trump card that I mentioned on stream, but it'll detract too much to mention it here, so I'll put it in the description box of this video. But okay, what if there's some backstory relating to Kaido and Fishmen Island? Or rather, when you think of what Fishmen Island's biggest adversary is, it'd be the world government. So maybe fighting the world government fulfilled the dragon fruit's will? But I'm not 100% sold on this besides the Dragon Palace statue, which is pretty crazy. So then maybe I was thinking maybe the dragon was the guardian spirit of the Lunarians and whatever their land was. So maybe by saving King, the last Lunarian, that was what triggered Kaido's awakening. Possibly, but then the obvious one would be the Celestial Dragons. Maybe the dragon that Kaido is actually the guardian spirit or the originator of the Celestial Dragons, or maybe just one of the dragons that they revere. Maybe there were multiple dragons actually, but let's say Kaido was one of them. So if it was meant to protect the Celestial Dragons, then how could anything Kaido have done been something that would have matched the original will, considering he wants to overthrow the world government? Well, that's where looking at who the opponents of the world government was in the Void Century will be important to make this make sense. The enemies were possibly Lunarians, definitely the Ancient Kingdom and the D-Clan, probably Fishmen, and humans in general, but a specific group for sure, and that would be the Kozuki clan on Wano. We know the Kozuki clan was one of the main counters to the world government, as they were the ones who created the poneglyphs. And that's where we might have found the connected will between the celestial dragon fruit that Kaido has and his actions. It feels like everything converges on Wano, and it does kind of feel random for Kaido to take over Wano and also aim to wipe out Odin and his bloodline. Taking over Wano or taking revenge over the samurai might be the will carried by the dragon, but that's not even the craziest part. Given the power of a dragon like Kaido, surely the original Awakened version was truly a monster. To stop or take down something like that, you'd probably be named a god. And boom, enter Ryuma. Ryuma could have been the one to kill the original dragon that Kaido is. I know there is the one-shot monsters that depicts the story slightly differently, but that was written before One Piece. But in the One Piece manga, it was said that hundreds of years ago, when Wano was referred to as the country of gold, Ryuma defended it so defiantly, Wano became known for their overwhelming power across the world. That's an interesting rumor, considering for it to be believed the way it was, then the dragon might have also been known across the world as well, and then defeating it would carry that much more weight. Thus, another possible tie into why Kaido seems obsessed with Wano, wants to take it over, but also enslaving the samurai and proving that they are weak. It might be that after his fight with Odin, where he defeated Odin, was when Kaido truly awakened his fruit, because that would have been the reversal from the original time the fruit existed. Though all of this is theory, again, like I was saying, I think awakening requirements do make sense, but I'm still unsure about Kaido's requirements. But it was a lot of fun to think about, because I think it does make sense in some ways. Maybe it'll end up being a mixture of everything, because again, how crazy is it that the Fishmen Island have a Ryugu Palace? One of the main questions being given is that they're underwater. When would they ever see a dragon in the first place? Doesn't it seem odd to have a Fishmen Island kingdom named after an imperial dragon, when in reality they would never see one and have no connection to a dragon? But maybe they did, and that's where the fish fruit came from. Anyways though, it does feel like Kaido's fruit has some higher spiritual purpose. Another point to bring up might also be that Kaido awakened the fruit at some point in the past. We also do know in the past that Kaido was a happier person and at some point took a turn towards a negative spiral of sorts. We were introduced to Kaido with a narrative card saying that his hobby was unaliving himself. Maybe this could be the devil fruit's will in wanting to be transferred due to Kaido failing to fulfill the fruit. So definitely we'll be watching for Kaido's backstory. Hopefully you thought this was interesting. If you like this idea, definitely check out my other videos. I had a bunch of crazy ideas in my recent streams. I'll link them down below. Make sure you join me on Twitch, Twitter, or Discord, or any of my socials to see more of my ideas. I'm definitely excited to share the next major video about shadows. And so, like always, thank you for connecting with me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all on the next Parvision.